Hello and welcome. I'm Sebastian Smith, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of a talk of the map I've been working on for a while. It's for Squad, and Squad uses the Unreal Engine, and it's just to make these a little bit bigger. So, oops, there we go. So Unreal Engine 4, 4.231. It's a little frameier than I would expect it. I will bring up the frame rate right now. I unfortunately would have done this with my 2080 Ti, but one of the fans went on it, so we're using an older Titan. Pardon me. And so I'm only recording this in 1080p. Before going to full screen, I will show you the sub-levels that I'm using. So these sub-levels here, this is based on a grid, and so they only need to be loaded if necessary. So if we turn this on, and okay, it's ignoring group for some reason. We'll see what happens if we, of course, always when we go to demonstrate does it start causing trouble. But yes, there's a grid. I'll show you some of the grid. It gives you a bit of an idea. That's broken up into 4x4 maps, and that's for the general geo. And these other lines are basically just for planning. And these white boxes, they are basically capture areas or main areas of buildings, points of interest. And these lines here represent different lattice networks that goes between the capture points. So here we have a main, and all the way over there we have a main. So those are mains, and then as you can see where they kind of group are where there could be capture points, and you can have different types of gameplay layers with Squad. And there's also smaller scrim versions and such. And because it folds back on itself, while this map is only I think 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, it could be 1.5. It actually feels like a larger map. Did get some playtesting I think in 2017 or 2018 when modding first came out. We had the SDK for I think a year or a year and a half before modding was available in Squad. And with the hills that I will show you, it takes longer for vehicles to get from one point to another, generally speaking, than infantry. Without being too convoluted, the road still makes sense. And for that reason, it does a balance between infantry and vehicles. So I'm quite happy with how that's turned out. And we'll zoom in a bit. So here we have US main. These are vehicle spawns. And there's like a protection zone. We've got helicopter pads up the back there for helicopters. Multiple entrances and exits. So this, in another layer, could actually be a small skirmish map. Although it kind of it has a fair bit of the gameplay elements for it, but it does kind of lack a little bit of detailing. And for lighting layers, I've got a few different ones. A lot of these also include we have nighttime, moon up there as well. It's using the concrete texture. And a lot of these have the optimization, and yeah. So if we hit G, make all that UI go away, get a bit of a clearer view. And which one should we go with? And this has a better and higher frame rate than most squad maps than the official ones, and generally it has better up close detail and resolution. It's mostly to do with the landscape, which occludes objects pretty well, and also with the way there's actually a lot of aspects that have gone into optimizing this. This, when it came out, had about 40 to 60% more frame rate than the official squad maps, and everyone who played it during the early playtest was quite happy. Unfortunately, with modding for squad, it's been very rocky, and half the time mods have not worked for a variety of reasons. So it's taken a long time for them to take off, and while they do technically work now, they still it's very difficult to update to the new system. Each file and model that I've used has to be recreated, and to do with file version aspects, and usually with each update something ends up getting broken. I've lost a lot of foliage in this map, which I'll demonstrate. Go full screen. I remember this being detailed rather differently and having a bit more of a blend to it. All these roads have been perfected over time, so I've tested them a lot so vehicles will drive through very easily. A number of the official maps have bridges in awkward locations, so you always get stuck on the bridge. You'll take a sharp turn, and vehicle turning in a computer game is usually a bit rough as far as getting an accurate turn on, or a small turn as you would expect. Also in the sub-levels, which I'll show you, is that a lot of the foliage is on different sub-levels, which means when it clusters together to create one draw call, and my draw calls are about on par with what they should be, even though I haven't done any optimization. I haven't done HLOD yet. But yeah, so if we turn our foliage large, we have just basically our grass, and I've set shadows for the large foliage and not for grass, because the grass, the visual difference is very low, so I was shading for it, but they do receive shadows from the trees. This also means the grass can render a lot further out than other squad maps. So I've also put the it's a lot of wheat and poppy fields, and I put them on their own layer, along with also the river foliage, which also includes a lot of the water as well. So, most of the terrain was made in a mixture of Photoshop and World Machine, and then a lot of handcrafting, and then putting it back into World Machine, back into Photoshop to get the splat maps. There's only actually four textures, and yeah, so we have the rock, we have some dirt, and we have like the erosion dirt, and also the riverbed. And if we zoom out, it does this nice scalar thing where it's actually so you have more detail when you get up close. You might see the transition there. So this means the resolution on the ground is very high. That was a problem with Squad. I think it's been fixed since. They seem to have taken we use very similar techniques to what I've done in the official maps. Turn large foliage on, because that is a major part of Squad. And each cluster of buildings or capture point of interest I've tried to make as unique as possible by kit bashing all the different models. So these got individual buildings, got a few walls, parts of walls, and I've tried to make these be able to play as a small skirmish as well. And a major thing with a lot of these type of levels, combined arms, large maps, open world, is to have a lot of to make it very porous, so people can move around without having too much difficulty as far as having to run a long way to get around something. And I think the capture is a little bit laggy at the moment, which is unfortunate. But as you can see, I'm getting 100 frames. Mind you, this is only 1080p. But once we get rid of the UI, we're hitting the cap, which is 120 FPS. And with the 2080 Ti, it runs this fabulously in 4K. It's the cap all the time. So yeah, a lot of thought as far as not too many doorways where you walk through and have to check both sides, because that becomes quite troublesome, and you see that a lot in Battlefield maps, which leads to someone camping around the doorway. Although in squad, because of its squad tactics, it's a little more, actually it's a lot more forgiving as far as design. You can put fairly realistic levels in squad and not have too much problem. You know, there's some floating foliage, and it's worth knowing that I'm a level designer much more than I am a environment artist. But I do know how to use the full Adobe suite, pretty much. Photoshop, Premiere. Actually, I haven't tried After Effects, and I've been using Photoshop since I think like 1997 or 1998 on an old Mac. All these ground textures were originally in the game, but they've been exported to Photoshop and just had some color changes and variation to make it all blend in with the mud huts, with this type of architecture material, which is generally speaking of the actual land, so that's why they should typically blend in pretty well. Not happy with a lot of these rock structures that I've made. I mean, they're okay, but ideally once they're grouped, and this one is actually grouped, it would be exported to Mayo or Max and then refined to have the same shape, but get rid of a lot of the clunkiness. And this is a texture material I've had to edit, where the top facing stuff will have more of a sandy dirt to it, and then stuff that's on an angle will have the rock texture, much like the landscape. All over the map there are all these little huts, and these huts can be seen from each other hut, and they're meant to be like a little bit like little sniper towers, a little bit of cover, because I've kept a lot of these hilltops very bare, and that's because as a sniper you could, there's a lot of cover up here, you could take a lot of advantage of that and be much more of a camper. So I wanted to balance that out. Also, with vehicles peaking on hills, I made them again very flat, so vehicles can't peak very well, and therefore, because that can be very detrimental to gameplay, just to have one tank in a really perfect position. You want to have at least a reasonable chance of hitting it at distance. Now, there's unfortunately a lot of foliage missing from this version, and I'll bring up a demonstration image in a second. But we have a small abandoned hut here. There's a lot of detailing missing as far as in the buildings. There's not a lot of anything, but that is pretty much on par with squad maps. The buildings are very bare inside, if not completely bare for most part. This road that curves around here. This is an example where infantry running from spawn can actually run straight across these tops of the hills, and can run up this hill here. And I'm trying to made the shadows not very dark on this map in a lot of the lighting versions, because to do with gamma and gamma cheating, which was a pretty big problem. So I wanted to make it a very even playing field as far as being in the buildings. And if you're in a building that's very dark at a distance and you're a sniper, you won't be seen, which is a problem as far as them being able to shoot you and you not knowing where they are and not being able to ever see them. And that's pretty unfair. But yeah, you can make your way through here to this other capture point here. Again, this one in particular was actually designed much like a Counter-Strike map. So we have a lot of doors on the outside. We have some choke points to be clutched, but also, you know, if that choke point gets too heavy, you don't want it to turn into a what would be the correct description? A kill zone, and that you can't get past. So you can make your way around. It's also worth noting in squad you can vault over walls. They are short enough, and so there's a few rocks here which jut out, which allow people to vault over. I'm not sure if I can even demonstrate this as an actual player, because it requires a lot of work as far as data entry goes now, as opposed to just putting down a spawn and setting the teams. So it's become very difficult to do anything like that. I've always planned for vistas and other details, because as a level designer, and I have been also starting to move into game design as well, and I've been theory crafting that for a very long time actually. But as both, I need to know a lot of aspects of the game and of game development. So yeah, I have a fairly good understanding of all the other aspects. And while I haven't actually done any modeling in a while, because I only have access to Blender really, I have done some stuff in Blender, some small edits and trims, and when I was in high school, and finished high school in 2003, we used Casman Modeler, SurfCam for CAD CAM stuff, using routers and stuff, and then Unigraphics, which got changed to NX, which is what a lot of the automotive companies and aerospace use. It's very much modeling of the drive shafts and cam shafts and such. Pardon me. It's another small one. Again, you can play it from left to right, and trying to keep it as porous as possible. So we have like a little entrance here, and of course if that is being camped by a whole squad or something, you can work your way around the walls. I'll probably use a bit more clutter here and there, but there's a chance I had clutter there, but it's been deleted. A lot of the clutter, a lot of the foliage, some of the buildings in another map, which I'll show you in another video, have been removed. And while this was designed on a 4K monitor, it's 39 inches, that gives me a 1440p viewing viewport. So, but it was designed for 1080p, 1440p, and 4K, and yeah, so it's as a proper level designer, you're considering all aspects, where every single sniper could be, where every single tank could be, every single jeep, what can get where, and with everything placed, trying to keep those aspects. Just trying to remember exactly where the screenshot is that I have of this. Somewhere around, I think it's from around here. So, and I think it is, yeah, it's this one. So this is an earlier version, and we'll just get that to line up roughly. It's kind of like that. And as you can see, the foliage has changed a lot. It's evolved. I've had to redo it completely 3 times, and I've had to fix it up probably another 3 or 4 times. Here's the hotel. We kind of have our like individual cabins, bungalows. We also have our water drainage, which you can crawl through. I've tried to use repeating architecture like this because there's not a lot of models and a lot of the buildings aren't too great. A lot of them only have, like this one has 2 doors, there's one there and one on the other side. But this building here only has 1 door. Got some stairs here, a bit of cover, it's a bit steeper. And as I said again, it's some design for some nice vistas and limited but plenty of long sight lines, but it's usually more for the visual enjoyment than it is for gameplay. But for instance, in Squad, an engagement range of here to these trees over here and this wall is actually pretty typical. This used to look a lot better. And as I said, I'm not environment artist, but Squad has pushed me to get better at that. It's something I always lacked when I worked on in the Source engine. And this compound here, again, it was designed to be like a Counter-Strike map. And you can go left to right, front to back. And there is some more testing I would have liked to have done as far as maybe putting in more doorways in certain areas or windows, just to. But I think I've made it fairly porous without being too porous. And Squad is a game of 100 players, and Squad's 9, so it's not uncommon to have at least 9 people versus 9 people in a set area, and sometimes quite easily up to 30 versus 30 in a set area while other capture points are being defended, which might not have any action at the time. As you can see, some of the LODs aren't very good on these models, but we work with what we can. Squad was made by a bunch of people working on a game called Project Reality, or a mod called Project Reality, or some of them I should say, and which is a mod of Battlefield 2. And the gameplay is between, say, Arma and Battlefield. And I personally preferred it in its earlier version back in 2017. It's a much more intense game with a lot of meta, and now it's a bit more generic, and yet it's still very difficult for new players. Work our way back a little bit. And so this road was, I probably edited this road probably a good 10 times before I got it exactly where I wanted it. I tend to be a little bit of a perfectionist as far as making sure the road isn't floating off the ground. If we get real close, you might just see that it is. Not quite. So we had this compound here, which we looked at before, and the road snakes around. And up here we got another little tower. What we also have just up here is a cave. This cave was based on, or was inspired by the old Nintendo 64 game 007, GoldenEye. And as you can see, I've used multiple entrances. It's not a very boring flat cave, and it's just mostly built by kit bashing what I think is 1 or 2 rocks. And yeah, there's a little. Also, that's the thing with squad is you're meant to put down habs which are either on the objective or within a running distance of the objective, but you also want them to be hidden. So there's a lot of bits like here where it's rather out of the way of, say, this capture point. Again, we have our flat top mountain to avoid snipers from peeking too much, and vehicles as well. A few nice little things. I've got a few like buildings that just, and this is like got some detail in it. This is much more detail than you'd see in your typical squad map, and yet the frame rate is much higher. That was also to do with the way I did the foliage, that reduced the draw of calls, and also the way shadows work. Here we have another small skirmish, and we'll first have a look at this compound. This is another compound that was designed very much, again, to play as skirmish or like a Counter-Strike map, and is almost self-contained. But in between those two, because this is somewhat mirrored, like it's meant to be balanced mirrored, but clearly not perfectly mirrored, and that asymmetrical symmetry, that's symmetrical but not, is kind of what I've been going for. And here we have this very tiny air dry. Again, there could be a spawn here in this building and another spawn there, and this could be good for 2v2 or up to 5v5, something round based. This is, you know, very basic type of little bit of gameplay here, but sometimes something like Ice World or the very other famous small simple maps that you see in other games. I do also have a competitive map that I made for this, which is rather fictional as opposed to being grounded in reality. It's almost kind of fantasy. It uses all these kind of assets, but it's not something you would expect to ever see in real life. Moving forwards, we have this compound over here, which typically wouldn't be a capture point, but in some modes it could be. It'd probably be very good for a hab to be placed. Fortunately, there aren't any very large buildings of this type of architectural style in Squad. And when I was making these maps, these were pretty much the only assets I had besides some European style. And yeah, but you can see I've kit bashed a lot here. Just wondering if we can remember the exact key to use to do the drag. There we go. Hardly ever use drag. And it's going to tell us how many objects we have selected. I don't see it. 149 objects selected, so there's quite a lot of objects there to kit bash. And checking all the sight lines and everything there. Again, we have some drainage entry here and here, and by being ducked down here or prone, you can avoid being seen. And that's yes, so Squad has ducking, proning, vaulting, leaning. We have another small one here, another small compound. So you can see a few entrances. Trying to give cover here instead of just being a plain entrance. The foliage also has visual cover, so you know, soft cover. I've got soft cover and hard cover. Another entrance here. And trying not to keep it flat. A lot of the Squad maps are very flat, which is not great for gameplay or frame rate. But I've also tried to not to go too crazy with the vertical. I have used verticality in my other map, which I'll show you, which is called Three Kings. And I actually started that map first in 2016, but it got I lost. It was either update or it got corrupted, and I lost the vast majority of my work with that. But I ended up rebuilding it with new assets that had become available with the SDK in 2017, and that one is much more like a typical Battlefield map than a Squad or Armor map. As we can see, we've got some nice curving roads up here. Also, the vehicles, when this was made, could not climb up mountains very well. So all of these roads are made very not steep. So I guess you could say shallow. Here we have another little, just tiny little compound. This is the kind of compound you could probably fit a hab in, if not a rally point, which is a temporary spawn. Whereas a hab is more of a hard spawn. Lots of just little details added, like this little pond here doesn't have to be here, but again, you could place a rally point here and the enemy should not be able to see it. But they will see players spawning, so there's a risk reward as far as how close you want to get in these compounds. Something if I had a bit more, like for instance, this is just a cheap way of putting in a pipe, because you don't, if you start hollowing out the ground, you lose frame rate in Unreal Engine 4. It does not handle putting holes in terrain very well, which is why the cave that I showed you before is done with rocks over the top of the terrain, as opposed to carving holes in the terrain, because that will drop the frame rate. So optimization is a very important thing to me, and because waste is a thief. Here we have another compound, and the way squad works, like a tank will take 14 normal RPGs, or at least 2 to 3 heavy anti-tank missiles. So its vehicles need to be balanced by the level design. It's very important, otherwise the gameplay can end up being quite horrible very quickly. So we've got some kind of more abandoned ruins here. Again, more waterways. They're a great asset to have, and this is meant to be a market. So this could have been quite plain and simple, and there's a lot of gameplay aspects as far as where you would normally have flow, and someone's very likely to have a decent fight in here, which will cause these watermelons to be shot. And as you can see here, these ones are stuck into the ground. And this is because there was an update, and it's decided to move the origin of them, and so they have to be reset. So here's what it is. Here we got a little stairway up to this top area, so you couldn't make your way around the top. Trying to give as many different options and not get someone to I'm not sure if pigeonhole is the right term, but want to have lots of flow. Again, we can move in here. We can vault over this table. We can't. I think. Oh yeah, I think you can vault over that one as well. Got this little market there, and this is I guess a fair bit of detailing compared to normal, and this is trying to use the assets that are there as best I can. There's probably more watermelons than I would like. I would ideally replace half the watermelons with something else. Got a bit more hard cover here, though there is bullet penetration in squad, so it depends on the caliber. Again, this is sunk down, and I think it's been moved over as well, which makes me, I think I have to check the other ones, make sure they haven't been moved over. Yeah, this one's definitely meant to be, we'll go change object, here we go. That one's meant to be there, which means as I was moving around here, yeah, these are meant to be, I'm pretty sure, more like that, if I remember right. It's always a losing battle with the squad updates, unfortunately, but it is what it is. And typically, you know, if you were the actual game developer, it wouldn't be so much of a problem, but as someone who, you know, has put 4,000 hours into the SDK, actually it's 3,000 into the SDK and you know, a few thousand into various other bits, it becomes quite frustrating considering how much downtime there's been, and a lot of other issues to do with squad. and modding and visibility, and basically every time it'd get close to critical mass of game mods going, something would happen, and we'd lose all the players. I mean, there's one point where if you had mods installed, your game wouldn't load, so the only way to get it to load was to unsub from the mods on the Steam Workshop. And so I went from 3,000 subs to 700 or something. So yeah, as you can see, nice little kit bashed building here. Some sight lines as well, as far as count the doorways, without giving too much of a advantage. Very Counter-Strike Dust style kind of staircases, very inspired by that. The angles, different levels, etc. Just zoom out again. So followed the road up here. Again, we got a bit more water drainage there. Not one you can crawl through, but definitely adds a little bit to it. These little walls adding cover and places to place an LMG. We'll move back over here. Actually, that is one thing. This compound that I'm looking at and that one there do feel a bit too similar, and I would change that up a bit, even though they look quite different from now. If you're down here in the creek, there's just a bit of a similarity as far as the same angle and the same and with the same lighting that will give a bit of a wait, haven't I been here before? And while that's kind of common in squad, because it's usually just, I've kit bashed a lot more than your typical squad map. So actually Samari has a lot of kit bashing in it, and it's also very high density, but it's a bit too high density and people complain about it a bit. So a little waterway here, lots of overgrown grass. This is a little bit open. I get a feeling I might have had a vehicle in here before, like an old car. Well, probably I've got all the SDKs backed up, and this is some very high foliage. This is definitely meant to be a soft cover, and then you peek through and someone's shooting through the foliage, and you know they're in there, so you spray and pray. As we move through here, we will eventually exit out down to this gully that's coming off here. As you'll see, I've also changed up these bridges a lot. Now there's a lot of variants of the same bridge, but I've changed each one and placed them in certain ways that you won't get confused. So instead of just using this one bridge model, actually is that going to tell us that's group? Yeah, see, that's made up of 13 parts, and you can I can merge those and export them so they become one draw call. That's where, oh, sorry, I should have been full screen this whole time, making you guys strain your eyes, my bad. But yeah, see, we have a similar bridge up the top here to that one, but they are slightly different, and because the surrounds are different, notably different, this one's got a lot more foliage around it, a lot closer, slightly different angle where the lighting will hit, so it will look different. It's important. These bridges I'm not particularly happy with, but they're what's in the SDK, and but they're it's acceptable. It definitely use some supports underneath for it to be a bit more believable. And here we have an olive grove. Again, we've got our little waterway you can crawl through. Another entrance there, another entrance there, another one there. This would be perfect for putting a hab in, because it would be hidden from UAV fairly well in amongst those trees. Again, these roads, they don't have a lot of steepness to them, so they are very easy for vehicles to drive around without struggling. Literally any vehicle going up anything, I'll try and find an example, anything say about yeah, maybe this steep, of which there were a lot of roads, actually more like this kind of steepness just here, right along here. That would lead the vehicle to go at about 5 kilometers per hour. So, and that seems to be mostly resolved, but it's still a much more enjoyable experience to have roads that you can drive at a reasonable pace through, a realistic pace, I would say. So just negating the problems by designing for the game, as opposed to waiting for the game vehicles to be edited and working as a player would typically expect. So it completely resolves that problem. Again, this one was designed to be played kind of left to right as a bit of a skirmish. And interestingly enough, I'm pretty sure there's some extra stuff that were on these sticks before. Here again, I almost trademark waterways where you can crawl through, sneak into the compound a little bit easier, which means the squad that should be defending this area will have to actually check all and have all the doorways covered. Oh, here's a bit of a mistake. Got a bit of the foliage poking through the wall. But in most places it's lined up fairly well, but this model might have been edited a bit. Either way, it's still a bit sloppy on my part, but then again, this is unlikely to be ever played by players again, which is unfortunate. I believe it would take me probably a week or probably 10-hour days to get this playable, and there's still a high probability an update will come along and stop it from being playable, and then I might have to redo all the work multiple times. This and that has stopped me with detailing, because I'm not too, if the clutter gets deleted and I have to replace it again, that's I find that more frustrating than overall large design. So that's why this one is very plain. I would probably have an inner number of walls here, which would vastly improve that, because I don't like that you can see all the way through it. It's bad for visibility, sight lines and all that. Here we have a nice small compound, and while this could have been done a lot more basic, like the way it is shaped allows you to place a hab behind here and have a little bit of gameplay. And whereas a lot of times you'll just see, say, this building just plonked down and it won't have any of these smaller walls, which give it a uniqueness and also allows players to recognize where they are instead of it being the same building, exactly the same. Try and change it up as much as possible. Here we have another small compound. And let's see if I can get, yeah, there we go, the camera didn't want to go. That's all back alley as well. This would ideally be placed with some clutter in it just to make it feel a bit full. It's, you know, someone's going to store their stuff. And we'll move back towards the center of the map. So US spawn is over here, and the enemy spawn is here. That's usually Russia, but there could be variants of this where it's US Afghan or Afghan versus Russia, etc. This one is pretty basic as far as it's the same building replicated like this. This could play okay as a small fun skirmish or deathmatch, but it's really just meant to be a spawn, and somewhat iconic as far as if you're driving past it on this this is intentionally meant to be made plain and boring. We'll move back towards the center. Again, we have these little lookout sniper towers which can be seen in various places along the map, and you can get to all of them. So one hiding over here as well somewhere. Can't quite see it. I think it's up there. I think it's on top of that rock. I've also tried to reduce the fog as much as possible, just because people moving in fog can be seen very easily, whereas someone who's stationary cannot, and that creates bad gameplay. So we got some small buildings here. This was mostly made as a little bit of cover, not so much for a lot of gameplay, which it's meant to kind of mirror this compound here, but it needs a bit more development, but it's not so important. Here we have the one I refer to as hotel. Oh, actually, we haven't looked at this grotto yet. So we've got this snaking up here. You can jump across from each side. There's different paths that lead up and lead down. A few little bits you can hide and whatnot. Nothing too special, but it has a reasonable sight lines. A few different ways of getting up and moving around. And keep bashing a lot of this so there isn't clipping is kind of difficult. Some people aren't too fussed about Z fighting and clipping, but I've tried to do my best. Anytime I see it, I fix it. Yeah, here we have another little market towards the center. The radio tower is actually the center of the map, so we'll just have a quick look at that just before we move on. Meant to be very plain and simple since it's up here. I was debating a lot whether to give it more cover and make it more of a capture point, but I think keeping it somewhat plain is important. But there is enough gameplay here to facilitate a squad versus squad taking over this advantageous center of the map. Yeah, I should get back to this a little bit more. So we've got like a little tunnel through these buildings, leads up here. Got some more stairs here. This outer wall. We've got market. Some little always through here. Again, this could probably be played. Maybe not as a. This would have to be a very small skirmish because of the shape. But it's to kind of mirror this one over here. So it'd be a lot of fighting across this river. The rivers were made fairly plain here. There's a lot of paths as well that go through all of these trees on the side of the rivers, which I haven't really shown much of. It's very important that it be very porous and that you can use the vast majority of this. There's nothing stopping someone from being up by this tree, being a sniper, and using that as a fair bit of cover in a game like Squad if you're clever. And in a lot of the Squad official maps, that grass wouldn't render, so you'd see the player really easy. But that player would think they're in cover. So that's why I did a lot of optimization when it came to the foliage. This one I'm very happy with. It requires some detailing. There's a little bit that I wish I did more of, which is in between these two air dryers. There should be these large blocks to structure this a bit more. It's going to have a top walkway, kind of like here, and then a bottom walkway. I think I did do a fair chunk of that, but then I had the editor crash, and I hadn't saved in a while. I actually did the market. Where is it? The market all the way over here with all those watermelons. I redid that. The first time I was really happy with it. The second time I did it, I was less happy with it. And as I said, with the way modding is at the moment, it becomes very difficult to, especially if you have to redo work again and again to put a super huge amount of effort into it, since there's no benefit to me. Like, people aren't going to play and go, that's amazing, because people can't play mods all the time. And that really seems to have only changed from the past week or two, and even then it seems somewhat, given the track record, not great. When I have gotten feedbacks on my maps, it's always been positive, which is a little bit frustrating as far as, come on, be honest, tell me everything that's wrong. You got to find something. And maybe they'll find a bit of floating foliage or something, but I'm looking for more for gameplay stuff. But I mean, I guess it's good that it's always been positive feedback, but it's hard to improve with positive feedback. You want some negative feedback. But this is mirrored, and it is so left to right. So it's kind of what you got mirrored here. You can fight through here. You can have a spawn behind here or there, and a spawn over here, and you can have multiple capture points and do a small skirmish. So yeah, I was quite happy with how this plays and sightlines, and we've got the roads going through it, so it is true combined arms. This would work particularly well in, say, Battlefield Bad Company 2, which is a game that I like very much, although the levels were smaller. It was like 32 players, not 64, like the other Battlefields. The gameplay was, everything in that game was very good. So here we have this all overgrown, kind of almost like ruins. And depending on the version, this whole section here doesn't have to be in play at all. But we'll get to that. Yeah, so we just got some small ruins here. Walls just breaking it up, turning it into sections. Got this road here, overpass, so vehicles can get a reasonable line of sight, but there is a lot of foliage and a lot of cover, and they can get quite hit easily by RPGs, as opposed to properly peeking. And they can't really peek on this hill because it's too flat. By the time they're looking, they'd have to be roughly here to be able to get the side angle to look down far enough. So, and we have a US main over there. And we have this little place here. So we've got this main road that travels all the way through it, and then we got this one that curves around and, you know, has a bit more access. We have a little dam, a little waterway here, and you can drive a vehicle through there, so that's a little bit of kind of like Battlefield-like fun. You could also drive the vehicle straight off of here, down that way, in a kind of just send it kind of way into the river. Again, lots of kit bashing, lots of porous flow through, trying in all of these to not be too pokey as far as and trying to give a actual like appropriate cover so you can actually flow through these. But you know, this building, is there any more here? That one, they're all the same building. This building, this building, this building, there's that one as well, and this building, this building, this one, they're all the same building. We got a two-story one here. I think there's another one hiding down there. Got that one over there. Same building. And then, of course, these you got, which are a bit more obvious because of that curve, flat roof thing going on. All the same building. So just trying to reutilize those assets as much as possible. A little veranda here on this one. And trying to make each road not be too much the same. So, you know, here we've got this little walkway that's on the side of the road. Lots of little things like this, but not too many. Stairs all the way down because we are dealing with a fair bit of verticality here. This is a second story building that I've kind of put in there. Again, we've got some stairs. Some stairs that go up there as well. Some more stairs there. Nice little kind of walkway here. Again, this is stuff that needs more detailing. Yeah, I've done a little bit, but it needs more. And as I said, one of the major things that's been deleted is been foliage, and the second one is probably clutter. So it's yeah, it makes it a very hard sell. Here again, we've got some stairs going down, some stairs. You can also climb up these rocks. A lot of the times where I put rocks, I've made a way that you can climb up them. And because of the sand texture appearing on generally slopes that you can walk up or crawl up, it's easy to identify where you can walk up and where you can't. And the rock, you clearly can't because it's too steep. So there's a thing with Squad where it doesn't actually have proper water. So it all has to be of a certain depth. So I actually need to re-level this. Because if you go prone, you won't be able. It's hard to see the player prone in the water, and they can just shoot out of it. So, but the vast, like all the rivers have been checked, and all the little puddles I've done again and again. So unless they've changed the origin point of the water plane, here I've just got a railway thing here, just a little bit of an abandoned spot, just kind of blended in. I was going to put a railway line that went kind of across here. There's another little aspect, and that's kind of a leftover from it. So again, we have a nice little compound here, lots of Counter-Strike, multiple entrances, room clearing kind of stuff, and a lot of these, should they be too overused, can just have doors put on them, closed up doors. And adding doors to these are sometimes a bit difficult. So here again we've got a bit of kit bashing, got a building on top of that one. A bit hard to get up there, but it is, you know, you have to have a little bit of walk around. Just trying to do some nice, interesting, varied architecture with what is basically some very basic set pieces. We've got a little water drainage thing there. Some stairs that go up to this third story. Trying to make it feel as natural as possible. These trees, unfortunately, don't quite fit, but this is the only tree that's this kind of shape that gives the cover I need for helicopters. So otherwise they all tend to be pretty poor. As you see, all the foliage is highlighted. This was meant to be, again, like a little kind of hotel area. Got a little back way, side fence, climb over there. Another little compound. Again, we got our little water thing again. It goes down to the river. So yeah, trying out a lot of variance. Working with the terrain that's there, and then editing the terrain to also fit. And here we've got a, you know, what would have been a very long sight line, and so I've broken it up with this air dry, and I've varied the walls a bit so they're not too even, not too flat, not too generic. And these are done with splines, which are a little bit hard to work with, but once you get used to it, they're pretty easy. And you know, we've got this nice little just divider between these fields, so there could be some farming equipment in here. Comes back out here to this compound I just showed you. So yeah, moving around, we've got this little double bridge, curves around. This is where it gets very plain. Got this compound here, which I'm quite happy with. This compound, it's nice and simple. It's only 2 entrances, 2 buildings. Got these 2 huts here. They would probably be more abandoned, and I'd probably put some more degraded walls around. Just zoom back up. Sorry for making you guys a little bit seasick. Tend to zip around on my maps a lot. This is a little, again, underdeveloped, but the rough shape is here, so it just needs some walls and whatnot. We've got a little, again, waterway you can crawl through, little bridge. But even then, these are the heights that I want them to be at, and with some stairs and the flat ground house bases, you know, you see there'd be, you know, a little bit of imagination. Doesn't go too far as you know. Well, you can see what it would be, what it would probably look like. Again, a lot of these are interconnecting roads. I don't want to cause the vehicles too much, for them to be too linear. But this I have restricted the vehicle movement in this a lot more than other squad maps, simply for the fact of balance, and it's also guiding them as well, as much as anything. So I'll just quickly show you planning. So as I said, with the radio here, this is the middle, and as we curve around, if this match was to start, I think I'll just turn off the fog if I can find that quickly. Trying to remember what's under. It's not fog. It just slipped my mind right now. Well, actually, we'll just throw on a different light map. See if it's a little less foggy. Just a little, well, I guess it's atmospheric haze. Yeah, there we go. So that's a little bit clearer, and maybe a little more Afghan. The other one is a bit more European with the blue tones. So this capture point and this capture point would actually be, there'd be a lot of fighting in between, and this is like the first rush of objectives, and if someone was to back rush, they'd rush these objectives here. And this is these two are meant to be tied together, and then you've got these objectives in the middle of those, so that creates a giant front line here. And then only if the enemies, and as it will push around, they'll also be fighting in between. This spreads out the enemies a lot, the players, and therefore you're not getting too heavy clustering, which is very important for frame rates. You know, if it's really nice to have 100 players, but if you have them all there at once, you end up with, well, 100 players trying to render all at once, so it becomes very difficult. And people can do the risk reward of going over the top to the enemy's other capture point where they've probably got a hab. But of course we've got that mountain rise in the middle. So that becomes a very risk reward, or they can work their way around. There's plenty of little different spots. Or they can follow the lattice more typically where there is a lot more cover. And so yeah, for players they'll be going slightly different to the lattice, and it naturally flows that way. The typical thing of if I want someone to walk down a hallway and only go through one doorway, I'll make that doorway more well lit than the other doorways, and if I want a door to be opened, then I'll make it look fresher and newer and more inviting than, say, a door that's rusted and old and it's got a lock on it. You know, all that psychology stuff you expect in level design. What can I demonstrate? I've got many aspects going on here, because it's combined arms level design is probably one of the more complicated level designs because you've got to factor in so many aspects. So we've got the radio tower there, and you'll notice that I can't really see the hills above it. That's for rendering purposes, also for gameplay, because you don't have the giant lines of sight. And then as you move up onto this tower, you can't really see the next row of hills over. Like, we do have some nice sight lines here and there, but not too far. Again, see all the compounds over there, you can't see, and it's occluded for frame rate reasons. It's also good for gameplay reasons. And then a lot of the maps, when they added helicopters into the game, were not designed for them, and the frame rates you go in flying are pretty terrible. But well, hopefully going to show you a great example, but looks like the frame rate has dipped a bit. It's possible I don't have the optimization on this layer, but still, we're viewing everything. So at this point, and in fact, in a lot of typical squad maps, anything past here wouldn't be rendered properly. You only see about half of that stuff, and we're still getting almost 60 frames. And if we we'll do stat RHI to finish this off. Where are we? It's gonna pop up. There it is. So primitive draw calls 5,400, which is a bit high. It's actually twice what it should be. But once we merge these down, we'll be dividing that number by about 5. So we'll be looking at probably 1,500, which is pretty good. It's actually very good. And once you add players, and again, all the clutter would also be clustered as well. We actually do have a little bit of clutter just hiding here in this corner. But yeah, as you can see, you can basically divide from up in the air, you probably divide it by 5, the draw calls, draw primitive calls, which are the direct sex calls, and when you're in like a place like this, you could probably divide it by roughly 2. We'll probably get the draw calls to go a bit higher if we find a really nasty spot. But yeah, and for a lot of the time, when you are close to the ground, you are going to get lower draw calls because of the line of sight and all that stuff. So. In fact, I've got to say, I think this one, though the shadows are nice, dark and rich, they're not too dark. And that was a problem that a lot of squad maps had. It took them a couple of years to get used to using this engine. And I wish I could show you one with all the proper foliage, because it was only a few tallish shrubs that disappeared, but they still added a lot, and they were all hand placed. Yeah, so also a lot of the mountains in the background are just a model, so that's, helps with frame rate. They're very basic. In fact, if we go on F11, we turn off landscape background, you kind of get an idea of how big this map is. The actual fully playable area. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of I mean, there's a lot of aspects I could talk about as far as we move down here. Got the road above, got multiple entrances and exits. You've got the aspect that there's water here, so we hear footsteps. All those gameplay design elements. Got these like little water. What's the name for them? They're very typical in Afghanistan to have all these water channels. I forget the exact name for them. And that gives it a bit of cover. You can go prone in and change it up. So I've got a doorway through there, and just try not have, look through one doorway and then look through 10 other doorways through there. That's fortunately typical in a lot of maps, and you want to have that little bit of change. We've got this bit here where the wall's broken down. Trying to tell a bit of an environment story here. The tree growing, it's probably got something to do with it. There's little stairs up here, but it's not necessary. You can go up and down the steepish terrain if you want. Stepping out here. If you want to go up this hill, some bits are obviously very steep. But you can definitely make it up here. Here we have a bit of overview. Our commander could sit with some binos and direct the squads as necessary. We can move up here, but there's a lot less cover. Again, all of these rocks I would export out and then get rid of all these bits, but this is what's in the SDK, so that's what I've been using. And yeah, a lot of hand placed rocks, and in fact those ones are merged. That's not merged. I think that lot is merged. And I just put them into a 3ds Max and just get rid of the pokey bits and give it a bit more of a more character that's suiting. But yeah, I was particularly happy with this one. This is one that got play tested. The original playtest in 2017, of which I have an interview on my YouTube channel, I think was pretty much this area here, and it included this, 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 and this up here, and I think it did a little bit of a zigzag like that. And I think I remember putting the spawn here instead of all the way back at main, so it's just kind of over here near this bridge, and the other spawn was here. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear people very well, and I should have apologized if the audio is terrible. I'm using my webcam mic, and my computer's case is open at the moment because I'm messing around trying to get this video card all sorted. And so I've actually got blankets hanging up on a clothes drying rack to block the noise of the fans, and then I've got this webcam mic picks up terrible echoes, etc. So yeah, I should apologize about that in the beginning. Yeah, it's oh, I don't think I showed this one. I'm particularly happy with this one as far as it's nice and simple, not too much going on, and it's not in a major gameplay spot, but it could definitely be used as a hab as people run down the hill and assault, and it's just got a visual kind of correctness to it. Rotated all these trees, so hopefully we won't see too much of them looking the same because they are the same model. They're just, rotated, try to rotate them so they look a little bit different. Oh, that one and that one are definitely too close. They haven't been rotated enough. This structure here was actually pre-built from the SDK, made out of modular pieces, and it's got weird sharp edges, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's got a little water thing in here. That's an example of merging the meshes, which would reduce the draw calls. Otherwise, this would be probably 100 objects or something. Probably 70. But yeah, you could easily hide a hab in here. And this could be used for some kind of 2v2 skirmish as well. The way the gameplay layers used to be, it was quite easy to make multiple gameplay layers for a map. So it's a little more in depth now. Just a few extra steps. Used to be able to make one in 20 minutes and upload it to the workshop, and now it's kind of like, I don't know, I guess 30 or 40 maybe an hour, depending on whether you run into trouble or not. Yeah, I suppose we didn't actually move through the rivers that much, but I have tried to put spots where vehicles can go back up, because it's kind of steep, back up onto roads, and so vehicles can travel in there, but it's not advised. I don't think there's any military that'd be like, hey, drive down the river in your tank. That's not a great idea. But that is also because there is no proper water in squad. That's why I've left them very dry. Got some stairs down there. Another kind of way down there. Yeah, it's there's also a lot of density, so like this is pretty good for squad as far as one, how much is visually on screen and the detail. At least how compared it was, it's better now, but it's still probably better than your typical squad map as far as visual, how much is on screen and the frame rate you get. So yeah, we're at 120 frames at the moment. Let's bring up the task manager. So your CPU is maxing out, which is draw calls. So if I was to fix that up, it'd be a lot better. But you don't want to merge meshes until you're kind of pretty sure about it, because you can't really unmerge them. You have to have multiple copies of the level. You have like a working level that you then merge meshes and copy it to the actual production level that's going to be uploaded. and I have more sub-levels than your typical squad map. Squad maps typically only have one for all the geo, and there's a number of reasons why that's not so great, mostly to do with the way foliage clusters, but it's also can be good for organization just to have it. A lot of these compounds are just on the one level, and that way you can, if we were say going to make a skirmish map here, anything that can't be seen we could actually make not load, and I don't mean like not because it's occluded, but physically not be part of the gameplay layer, which has all the sub levels. So it's a lot of optimization there, which means less RAM, and so someone on a lower end computer can play skirmish matches with, whereas they might not be able to play the combined arms matches because they're below minimum spec, and therefore increasing the amount of customers you have. So many aspects I try and factor in. Again, like designing for a nice overall visual. Like this could have been flat and boring without any of these mountains, and it would have been somewhat acceptable. Maybe not frame rate wise because of the density and quality, but I believe that this is it was a bit more time consuming. Although most of my time, I'd say half my time spent on this map was actually spent fixing things that got broken with updates. So while time-wise it might seem like I spent a lot of time on this map, I didn't in comparison to the amount of time I spent fixing stuff. So, but sometimes that's just the way it is. It's the way cookie crumbles. Nighttime version, got the moon up there. As you can see in the nighttime version, it's actually a little bit black. I think I've got a bit better version of this that I've used, which doesn't have the blacks, so it's much more like moonlit. You still have some shadows, but they're not dark enough to hide in. For some reason, it's possible they've changed something recently, so I just tweak it a bit more, go back in and tweak it. But it's clearly nighttime. Maybe a little bit before dusk, a little bit after the sun has set. We've got pretty good visual, like clarity. If I retweak these shadows not to be so dark, see how dark they are. But yeah, it's and this is all dynamic lighting. None of this is pre-rendered, so it's probably worth noting. Another lighting, and another one which is very similar to the one we just saw, but just a little bit different. And you do that with each layer, gameplay layer. That way, each time you load up a different layer, it looks different. So it's more identifiable that this is the version 1 or version 2 of the large lattice, or which skirmish map it is, and the nighttime one is almost very much like a theme. But yeah, I mean, I've probably waffled on. This is probably getting on to an hour long. I suppose we could quickly go through some of the screenshots. Oh, this is 3 kings. 3 kings, 3 kings. I really should actually make a separate video. But yeah, this is a training map. It's got targets and distances. In fact, these are old screenshots. But this has the target range there. Small kill house here. Vehicle testing is over here. It slopes. And here we have a foliage check where you check camo. This was for some modders that were going to make a special forces thing, and they still are, but there's just been a lot of hiccups. This is actually using all the same terrain stuff that I did, but this is the dam map. It's meant to be more vehicle heavy, so think 6v6 tanks. So yeah, 6 tanks per side, 6 APCs, BTRs per side, strikers, Bradleys, that kind of thing. Helicopters. You drive through the bottom of the dam, little construction site going on there. So yeah, So yeah, you can drive through the dam, construction site, you can drive through this overflow area, various creeks that if you get stuck in, or go off the end of cover, hide on some bridges. Yeah, so this was just this was a fun map, this one. See one of the bridges I've designed, kit bashed, and the river runs through the middle of basically what is, each side, blue versus red, the river runs through the middle. Here we have Operation Silver. This is an older screenshot, but not too old. Got the market that's done with all the watermelons. As you can see, the tables are the right height. Didn't have to fix them up. Put in some models for a screenshot. This is using some Epic Marketplace content to make a US style city map. In the end, I decided to shelve it, and I will be making this as a separate map that can be put into any Unreal Engine 4 game, so be it Squad, Insurgency, even Ark. So yeah, this was just a little scene that I did. The idea is there'd be some stairs underneath that go up top side and whatnot to keeping a bit of that verticality, kind of a Battlefield concept as far as the bottoms of the buildings you go into, and there'd be an elevator or equivalent that would take you top to the roof, or top floor at least, but not pushing it any further than that as far as open world. 3 kings again, 3 kings, 3 kings. Some of these you'll see variants. In fact, I'd like to point out that these palm trees, half of the palm trees got delayed, and I spent a lot of time perfectly placing them so they looked right, and half of them disappeared. So it's unfortunate. You can see the splines here. In fact, just quickly, before we go looking through too many screenshots, and of course I do have them available elsewhere. Just hit G. But yeah, you can see the splines of the roads. And I spent a lot of time to stop Z fighting. We might be actually just see a little bit of Z fighting here. Okay, we don't, because I've done it really well. But yeah, usually it's Z fighting if you make an intersection like this. In fact, if we hit the splines tool, which might lag up the computer a bit, we'll see what happens. Manage. Okay, it's going to compile shaders. That's okay. My computer's from 2014, but I've got it overclocked to 4.39. I had it overclocked to 4.9 before, but then we ran into summer, and then I went back to the old overclock. It's yeah, 4930K, 6 core. I've turned off hyperthreading for now, because it actually runs about the same, and it's better if you want to do the overclock. So we just oops. Where are we? Add splines. So I made the spline cards a bit small, but yeah, you get it. Lots of roads. A lot of the walls used to be splines, but they use more performance, and sometimes they can look a little bit wonky, which takes a lot of work. So they've been replaced with statics, which can therefore more easily be merged. Yeah, and here's the spline that just applies a landscape layer texture over the top for a little footpath. Again, a little bit of verticality. Trying to work with what the terrain is there. Try and make it look natural. Olive grove here. Stairs that lead up here through the second level of the olive grove, and that makes its way to this compound here, which has got a little creek running through it. Nice little dead end here to park a lodgy, build a hab. But yeah, just trying to find a landscaped wall. I've got another little path here over the top. A lot of them didn't need something that detailed, but you know, you can walk along here quite nicely. There's a little way inside there into that compound below the market. Lots of variants, lots of that good stuff. Trying to find a splined wall for you just for the sake of it, but I think I've replaced a lot of them, it would seem. because yeah, frame rate, which is all on the CPU, and most people in squad are CPU bound. You'd literally have to have a high-end GPU with a absolute potato. High-end CPU with an absolute potato GPU to be GPU bound. And even then, you could adjust the settings. Here we have a spline wall, this compound, which I'd probably add a little more to. As you can see, I added a little drainage ditch and started to work on it. Should usually have a path and a little wooden bridge. It's possible that I even did that, and then the editor crashed. And although the editor's been a lot more stable as far as level design goes, I built this computer back in 2014 specifically for Unreal Engine. Got 64 gigabytes of RAM. I put it in Unreal. I had it on a RAID array, which was pretty good, but now I moved it to an SDK and went from a 970 trying to run 4K, which was actually pretty decent at, to a 980 Ti, which is very good at running 4K, and then the Titan's basically a 1080p. 1080 Ti. So, but it runs a little bit better at 4K than 1080 Ti, and yeah, that was quite excellent. And then a little bit before Christmas, bought a second-hand 2080 Ti, but one of the fans had died, and yada yada yada. But that's all right. I'm gonna get a water block for that at some point, and yeah, the CPU's holding up really well. In fact, it has no right to be 7 years old. Actually, it came out late 2013, so I guess it's 8 years old. It has no right to be as good as it is, but yeah. That is the thing. I also do hardware stuff. I'm quite interested in my hardware. So this 39-inch 4K monitor. It's only 60 frames, 60 FPS, but it the amount of screen real estate is amazing. Workflow improved drastically, and I've got a 1080p screen, which it's for all the little extras, references, and whatnot. Anyway, I should really finish this one up and end up doing the second one, which will be on Three Kings, and then I'll probably do another one which will cover some of the other levels. So if you've made it all this way, you are definitely a champ. Because I do tend to talk about this stuff a lot and waffle on a lot, because it I've only touched on a very minor amount compared to what's really how much there is to go on with level design. It's very deep, and I'm still learning things, but I would say that I've probably got a good 90% very down, and very few times do I come across something that really surprises me or I'll actually learn anything, and that's why I'm moving on to more game design, which I feel like I've actually covered a lot, but I need to put into practice. Again, as you can see, I just keep talking. And that's not usual for me about other things, but it is definitely when it comes to game design and levels and stuff. So, yeah, very passionate. Alright, yeah, thank you for watching.